Welcome to module 33 of Database Management Systems course in IIT Madras online BSc program. We are discussing application design and development using databases in the back. We have discussed about the architecture, and since significant majority of these applications are web based, internet based, we have also discussed about web fundamentals, the basic structure of the web architecture, the scripting, and all these in the last module. So, this is what you have learned. Now, going forward, so if I just give you a quick reminder of the three-tier architecture, there is a presentation layer which is interacting with the user. It is on the browser. So, what is the requirement, development requirement there? You have to be able to write design the HTML, the elements and all that, and the validations or autofill and so on. You need to have the JavaScripts or some client side scripting for it, right. So, this is something which you can practice more in the application development course. The second part is the middle tier, which is a application or business logic layer, where primarily you will have different kind of logic in typical object oriented design, Java or C++, and you will have object models corresponding to the relational models. And so, how to do that you know from your programming, object oriented programming background. So, that I assume that you will be able to do that. To facilitate the creation of HTML pages from servicing the query, we have servlets or server side scripting, JSP and so on. So, which can help you actually more easily write the query response by filling up an HTML template with the query results, and we have taken a quick look at how to do that. This is not difficult, though you have not done it, you can easily pick it up. So, that part, the server side scripting, we can assume that you will be able to do. What is left, and beyond that is the data access layer or data layer, where you have the database, the tables, the query, the constraints, the data instances, and SQL to be able to access or update those data. So, this is the whole paradigm. So, the only missing piece in this is the fact that in your servlet or in your high level programming in the application layer, based on the request that you have got, you will need to get the right result from the database. Now, database understands SQL. So, one part would be that you will have to go to the database and present the SQL query. If you present the SQL query, the database will give you a response. That response, what is the response? Is a relation, which means it is a table. So, that table you will have to take and put into HTML. So, anything from the beginning of the front end to the point where you have the servlets or the high level programming language, knowing what data it needs to extract from the database, this part is known to you. Once the query goes to the database, you know how to answer it, and once the table comes back, again you know how to do the HTML and set it back. So, the missing part in the game, in the jigsaw, is from the high level, how do I make that SQL execute and get the result, and how do I get that result back from the database into the high level programming. That is what is the that is a core application development area from the database perspective, and we would like to discuss that working with SQL, SQL and native languages, high level programming languages. So, the basic idea is simple, is you will have to create some kind of a application programming interface, API, which it can interact with the database server. Now, what are the things that it grossly needs to do? It needs to connect with the database server, because please do not assume that there is only one database server, there could be multiple. So, it needs to connect to the database server. Even one database server will have multiple users with different rights and so on. So, you need to connect to the database server with the proper user credentials. Once that is done, you need to send the SQL command in some way to the database server. Once you send that, the database server knows how to process that SQL command to generate the data. It generates a table, or you can say a sequence of tuples, and then you will have to fetch those tuples one by one, because there is a sequence, that table rows different, into your high level program, so that you can proceed further. And after you are totally done, what you can put here is close connection. Once you are done, you can certainly close the connection, so that it cannot be used by mistake somewhere else. Now, for this there are two kinds of dominant framework. One which is the Connectionist framework, which creates, kind of creates a driver which connects between the native language and the database server. This is called ODBC, Open Database Connectivity, and it works with almost all major programming languages. There are other Connectionist APIs also, which include say ODBC, object linking and embedding. This Microsoft brought it in very early days, and ADONet, .NET and so on. And the other which is very popular is JDBC, which is Java specific, which is Java database connectivity. So, this is one approach, Connectionist. So, in Connectionist approach, your SQL program is kind of created, executed through a set of APIs that these drivers provide. The other approach is embedding. In embedding, you put SQL commands in some format inside your native language, program. This again works with a large number of programming languages. So, we will take a look at both of them one by one. So, this is the overall architecture of the Connectionist one. So, you have a high level program, and you have SQL query with tables and all that, and you have this connection library, which could be ODBC, it could be JDBC, some set of APIs which allows you from the high level language to submit the query, connect and submit the query and get the result. And then it is the inside the database process, the typical SQL query processing using the database and schema. This part is what we have already covered. Okay. So, given this, what is ODBC? It is a standard API for accessing database. So, the objective of ODBC is it is database system independent as well as it is operating system independent. That is, if you have written an application program using the ODBC APIs, then it will work on operating system and it will work for all database systems, which is very much required. Otherwise, migration would be a big problem. It can be ported to other platforms, both on the client as well as server side, with only few changes that may be required. Those are required, few changes are required at times because of the hardware differences and so on. So, this is thematically what you will do in a ODBC used application. Open the connection, send query and updates, get back result. Historically, it was developed by Microsoft and Simba Technologies, and later on SQL, this is in 90s, so SQL subsumed it and it is in the standard. So, let me just quickly show you an ODBC example with Python. So, Python has a ODBC library called PIODBC. Okay. Python has several ways, we will see. So, the first thing you do is this library.connect. So, this is an API and you pass as parameter the different information that is required, which is the database ID, SQLS, the user ID and the password, right? You will require that. Once you have done that, then you have got a connection object. On the connection object, you create a cursor. A cursor is nothing but it is like pointer, like if you have a table, say you have a table with several rows, a cursor is a pointer which is somewhere in the table and then it moves to the next. If you say I am done with this table, this row, it goes to the next, you are done with this row, goes to the next. So, it is like a pointer, or you can think of in C++, Java style, you can think of it as an iterator. It is basically is an iterator. So, you create a cursor and then on that cursor you execute. So, execute is basically it will take an SQL command and execute. So, you can see that we have given a command to create table simply as a text string. So, this is an SQL command, you just give it as a text string. Then you have another SQL command. So, it creates a table, inserts the data and there is a third statement executed which is select. When you do that, it will get back a result, right, select star. So, it will get back all those which is currently only one row, because you have created and inserted only one, you will get back that. So, where will you get it? You will get it in the fetch one method of the cursor. So, fetch one will get you one row at a time. So, it gets you, take it in the row. If it is not a row, which means that if it is at the end, then you break, you are done, otherwise you print. Similarly, it shows few more deletions inside. I mean, you can write any kind of SQL query in this manner. This is your connect part, this is your result part and this is your SQL query part. Very simple structure. You can write, these are variants of the particular PY ODBC style, right. You can directly write everything in the string, or you can write the query as a string and keep some parameters which you put later on. Okay. So, that is the basic ODBC structure. Similarly, there is a API for Java called JDBC, and this was brought out much later after ODBC in 97 in the Java Development Kit 1.1, and since then it has been a part of the Java Standard Edition platform. It is supported by Oracle, of course, and it specifically works with Java. And since Java is a significantly platform independent language and efficient in terms of writing application programs, so JDBC has that a very good acceptance. Again, the steps are like ODBC, open the connection. This is which is specific to JDBC, because JDBC is completely object based, right, because it is specifically for Java. ODBC cannot assume that, because ODBC supports languages which do not have any object. So, here it creates a statement object that becomes the handle through which you do everything, and you execute the query using the statement objects to send query, to fetch results. The statement is your handle to do things, and it also has exception mechanism to handle errors. Right? Very efficient, very simple and nice to use. So, here I just show a simple example which is a Java code using the JDBC. Now, initially here you will see that certain imports I am making, which is the JDBC related imports. Then the first thing is connection, right. So, I need to build the connection URL. What do I connect to? I need the server with the port where it is. I need the database in that, it is the name of the database. I need the user, I need the password. So, I put all of these into a string and then I through my driver manager, because I said JDBC is a driver, we say get connection passing this parameter. So, it gives me a connection and with that connection I do a create statement. So, the first thing was to get connected and then have a statement which will work as a handle between Java and the database, right. There is a try to take care of if the connection could not be done. For example, the password is wrong or the database name does not exist and so on. If it is, then you handle it here with the stack trace you print. Now, if it is correct, then first step I do is with the statement I call create table. Right. So, let us see what is create table. As the name suggests, it will create a table. So, let us go to the next slide and see what is create table. So, here is create table, private static void create table, which takes a statement. So, it has got the statement in using which you will do the creation. So, statement has an execute which executes any SQL command. Right. So, you have given a command we want to create a table. So, the first thing I want to ensure that the table does not exist. Right. So, I do a select star in the sys objects. Sys object is what? Sys object is the collection of the data dictionary where all table names and all those are kept. So, if that selection returns anything, then the table exists. So, if it exists, then we will drop the table. If it does not, then we will do nothing. So, now I form the query for creating the table. This is create table, the name, the first attribute with all the, this is just pure, plain and simple, pure SQL, except this notation for the name. Everything else is exactly the same, maybe the way you write the types are a little different, but it exactly corresponds to the SQL. So, I create a table with two attributes 1 and 2 and then the statement I execute, the table is created. And then I keep on making a statement, take a string to insert a pair of values as a product 1, execute. So, first insert done, second insert done, third insert done. So, after I have executed this method, obviously, I will have the table having 3 products into it. Right. So, let me get back here. So, I have done create table, table is ready. Now, I make the query string select star from the table and I define a result set. Result set, I said the result will be in terms of a table. So, that is called a result set. So, this actually is like a table which we will be able to iterate and print. And then I do statement dot execute query. On the statement I execute the query like this. I could have done statement execute within that, any of that is possible, right. Then I do display row. So, I have got the result set, now I have to show that, display that, create the HTML and so on. So, let me again go to the next slide. So, where I have display row, which takes a title and a result set. So, the title is the title of the table. So, I print that title, which is simple. Then what I am doing is I iterate on this table with for the product ID rs.next. So, this is an iterator, and at every iteration value I get the string corresponding to product ID and the name. This is the two things I had done, product ID and name. So, that is the two columns that have come. So, I take two of those values from the row, print it, take the next two, print it, take the next two, print it, and I am done. So, this is how very easily using JDBC a simple Java application with the database can be created. Now, there are often questions that certain databases may support ODBC, but you may want to use Java JDBC with that or vice versa. So, there are certain bridge drivers which bridge between two of these drivers. So, ODBC to JDBC bridge, it consists of a ODBC driver which uses a JDBC driver to connect to a database. Right. So, so that your application program is written in ODBC, but the database is actually supporting JDBC. You can still, using this bridge driver, you can do that. You can do the reverse also. You can do it from OLEDB to ODBC. You can do edu.net to ODBC. So, basically putting all this together, you have immense connectionist power to use any of these drivers from any languages and connect to any database with any kind of support in terms of the connectivity to the application program. Right. So, that was the connectionist view. Next, what we see is the embedding view, which is where what you do a different thing. You put the SQL query as a part of your source language and let the whole thing be handled in the query processing itself. So, for that you need again what you need to say that you execute a statement. So, you have a host language, say Python or Java or C++, and in that you want some unique way to say that this part is SQL. So, you use a tag like exec SQL, or some systems use hash SQL, and anything which is SQL you put inside that. So, the general structure is like that: exec SQL, then you have an SQL statement. That is one part. So, what will you need to do along with this? You will need to connect, the first step. So, this is straightforward. This is straightforward. Exec SQL, connect to server name, username using password. This will give you the connection. For multiple SQL commands, you write a section and you write the commands, SQL commands within that. Now, the key point is how do you give input values to the SQL and how do you get the result back. So, what is the communication between the host language variable and the SQL statement? So, that is done in a very simple way. You declare a variable in the host language, say you have declared a variable credit amount. If you declare a credit amount, then this becomes :credit amount becomes a variable in the SQL statement, as simple. So, if you put a value in credit amount in the high level, it will be available in the SQL as :credit amount. Right. So, now you know, now you can put the value, get the value and so on. Very simple designs is that. Now, we have seen that in the connectionist we did a way to take the table out. So, what we did, we used iterators. So, we need a similar thing here. So, what is supported for embedding is declaring cursor. So, you declare C as a cursor for an SQL query. So, this is declare C as a cursor for this query, which means the result of this query will be available in this cursor C, and then you can iterate on that cursor to get the values out. You can see that in the query we have used a host language variable value by using a colon before it, so that it becomes a part of the SQL query. Structurally very simple. This is we have already discussed. Now, after connection you open a cursor, you have defined a cursor, you open a cursor. So, cursor needs to be open, so that it is available for taking your data, and then you fetch C into, C is the cursor, into what are these? These are obviously host language variables. So, from the cursor you take the values to the specific host language variables. Keep on doing that repeatedly, keep on calling the fetch in the SQL, and you will keep on getting the subsequent tuples. Your iteration happens. So, it is declaring a cursor, opening it, executing the query, and then doing fetch on the cursor repeatedly, and every time you get the entire tuple you need to have placeholders for host language variables which will get those values. Finally, when you are done you close the cursor, it is no more available. So, some you can do this for update as well. You can take a cursor for update and then update using that cursor. So, here you are declaring a cursor, this is your query, you get the list of instructors, the cursor is for update you have set, and then you update instructor, this is same as before, you say the where the current of C. So, instead of actually giving you a separate relation to update from, you are giving a temporary table which is this cursor as a result of this. So, these are the different variants that you have. Okay. So, time for a full example. So, here there is a seller table, this is a C example. So, this is a seller table which from where you can give the ID and get the seller's age, that is a very simple. So, let us see what are the embedding requirements. So, these two are for headers for embedding SQL. This includes the error reporting, this says that the error reporting can be done. This is declaration section where you are declaring host language variables to be used in SQL, sage, sid, sname. This is simple programming variables. Then you have a macro for printing a message, right, which the macro prints a message in SQL if the return code is 0 and SQL. So, error handling. Let us look at the meat of that thing. Now, let me go to the main first. So, what do you have in the main? You take a main has argc greater than 1. So, it checks that whether it has got a command line input. If it is there, it will go, otherwise it will not work. If it is there, then that is the seller ID for whom I want the seller age. So, I connect, this is the database name hard coded here for that example, some database name. This is the check, the macro to check for error, if there is error it will exit. Then I have exec SQL, the actual query. So, what is SID is colon SID, this is the this SID, host language variable. So, that ID will come there. This is the table and I have got sname sh into colon sname colon sh, which are also host language variable. Okay. Here I am not getting into so much of cursor and all, because I know there will be only one value. Okay. So, then you once this is done, then you can report, because you have the sname, you have the sh. So, this goes here, this goes here. If there is error, you reset the connection. So, this is a simple scheme of actually doing this. So, there is a, if this is just to tell you what the result should be, if this is the instance and if your input is assuming S age is the application name is 44, that is SID 44, then you will should get this SID request is 44. This is Guppy. So, Guppy's age is 31, executed successfully. So, this is an example of how you can do it through embedding. Right? Just I have given another example in C, which you should read and understand it better. I have also given an example in Java, which is little bit longish, but this has more functionality in terms of actually having the two different types of cursor. And you can see that in this particular embedding framework, instead of exec SQL, it is using hash SQL. In different places in this code, you will find that I have given markers, comment with number, so that you can go to the next slide. So, one here is an application cursor. So, if you go to the next slide, you will find what is the explanation of what that step in terms of embedded SQL is doing. Right? In this way, it goes on. It is little long to discuss in the lecture, but I have included it so that you can conveniently read through the code and look at the comments and get a complete feel of an application. This is just for a variant I have used Java here. So, this is the whole and with the final notes. So, that brings us to the end of this module. We have discussed here how to access a database through SQL from a host programming language through Connectionist or embedded styles. Thank you very much for your attention. We will do more on this in the next module.